This is the Cruciform Conversations podcast, where we explore the healing and transforming love of God and seek to be peacemakers and reconcilers in a fractured world. I'm your host, Greg Arthur. To find out more and engage in the conversation, make sure you subscribe to the Cruciform Reflections Substack at drgregarthur.substack.com. Well, welcome to Cruciform Conversations, where we're seeking to understand the self-giving love of God revealed in Christ so that we might participate in God's healing of the world. My name is Greg Arthur, and my guest today is my man, Gino Kirkrudo. Gino, did I nail the last name? I really tried.
You did. You did it right on. Thanks, Greg.
Okay,
it's great to be with you.
I feel good about that. Well, thanks for being with me today.
Yes.
Gino, we're joking because when we first had coffee last year, but it was after like people had been invoking his name for several years. Like his name just kept existing in my world. And so I was like, hey, we got to meet. I was in Philadelphia, but it was like a meme experience. Like for me at the end of the coffee, it was like the scene in the earth-shattering film Step Brothers when John C. Reilly looks at Will Ferrell and says, did we just become best friends?
That's 100% true.
Or based on what we're dressed like today in our uniforms,
Yes.
maybe it's the Spider-Man meme of like middle-aged men doing contextual theology.
That's exactly it. I mean, I focused less in my memory, less on how we look alike, and so much about, I was just so appreciative of someone who's in our city and willing to meet me at one of my favorite local coffee shops and talk about contextual theology, life. And afterwards, I was just like, I think I just made a really good friend. So it's so great to be here with you. And thanks again for having me on.
And I need to make a return trip to Philly, maybe to catch a
Absolutely.
Sixers game. Well, it'll make a whole event of it.
If we can get tickets, man, you know.
It's going up. Well, for those of you who aren't best friends with Gino yet, a bit about his background. He's a pastor of the Table Philadelphia, which is a church of communities that are really doing some beautiful work, gauging God's presence in daily life, and really committed to serving their neighbors. He has the unusual pastoral background of 25 years of being a chiropractor, which, that may draw all sorts of insights for us. Teaches theology in a prison education program and is serving as a program advisor for the contextual theology program at Northern Seminary, where we both studied, and co-owns Habitat Coffee Roasters. That's a lot, Gino.
That's all true. Yeah, it is a lot. Some of those things don't take as much time as they sound like on paper, though.
That's fair.
Like the roaster. I don't roast the coffee, but yes, glad to have my hands in it.
Yeah. So can we talk coffee for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you a coffee purist? Do you take your coffee lots of different ways? How do you approach coffee?
That's such a great way to ask that question. I appreciate it. I have 3 of my 4 kids are baristas. So, there's a lot of pressure in how I answer this question.
Yeah.
I am a black coffee drinker. I like the lighter roasts with like the floral and fruity flavors. So I am a bit of a snob. And we would say that though I do appreciate other coffee drinks, like, you will see me with a latte or definitely a cortado quite often, which apparently the baristas say is a snooty barista drink. You either drink black coffee or a cortado.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I was really late to coffee in my life, like mid-30s.
Yeah.
Literally never had touched it, never whatever. And definitely the introduction was more like, it tastes sort of like a milkshake.
Yes.
Not a coffee, right? Like,
yes.
but I came along, and but because I just delight in all things coffee, I'll drink it anyway.
Yes.
Like I don't know, that tastes good. That tastes good. Like I don't have any like purity to it. But I name that because this summer, like the TikTok reels got me, and there was this dirty soda version that really got me, and I'm enjoying one today. And it's a Coke Zero with a shot of espresso in it.
Whoa! All right.
And I got to tell you, it's delicious.
So if I was with my coffee, people, we'd probably, turn our nose at that. But since I'm with you and whoever's listening, I'm like, man, go enjoy it though. That's the end of it. Like, listen, at Habitat, we're all about hospitality. So
there you go.
We want people to have the coffee the way they like.
I am not saying this is a better form of coffee. All I'm saying is that when I drink something, it's for my pleasure, and this is delicious.
Absolutely. As you should. Me as well. Yeah, that's great.
Well, with sort of, all the different pieces and different background, can you just share a little bit of your journey into pastoral ministry and how did you arrive at what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm an old guy, so it's a long story, but I'll give you some of the highlights. As you said, I did practice as a chiropractor for 25 years. My dad is a chiropractor, still practices. My grandfather was before. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I grew up in California. That doesn't mean that I couldn't be a Christian in California, but the odds are stacked against you in those situations. And so I came to faith later in life, closer to 30 years old, which is right around the time that I met and married my wife, had
Mm,
our first kid right after that, and moved across the country from California to the Philadelphia area. During that time is when I kind of started experiencing people talking to me about Jesus in a way that seemed really relevant, and
mm,
not just relevant, but honest and useful. I hate to make Jesus useful, but I think that most of my experience previously was Christianity was something other. The people that practiced or followed Jesus didn't really, they wanted to include me in things, but more as a pawn in something. I felt like I was like, hey, come to this event. And also within my practice, to be totally honest, most of the Christians were the hardest ones to work with on
mm,
finances. And I should tell you that my practice, I had a box on the wall, and everyone determined what they could afford and wanted to pay me for my services, because I just wanted to care for as many people as I could. And so for
wow,
25 years, I had an honor system. Most of those years not as a Christian, or many of those years not as a Christian.
wow,
And I always found it interesting to interact with Christians around finances. So all that to say, I
wow.
came to faith. My wife started following Jesus as well. Many of my Christian friends told me I was unequally yoked. And I said, I don't know what eggs have to do with it. I literally said that. It is funny in hindsight, but that gives you the most insight into me and where
And
I'm
also who
from.
your friends were at the time and what your entry into things were. Like, let's just also name
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like to narrate this kind of with some of the funny aspects, but they always often seem to like give a negative view of other people. And I think what I want to say is that I think everyone, particularly my friends that are Christians, maybe that I didn't resonate with or don't resonate with in some ways, I think that they're also like sincere and earnest in what they're trying to do. And I think that's
Mm,
probably what we're going to talk about when we get to like ideology and we talk about this. It's like
mhm,
they're really pursuing what they think is right. And so in saying you're unequally yoked, I think in their mind they thought they were helping me by loving me truthfully or something like
yeah,
that. But the context for me was, what have I done? Have I just made a mistake getting married?
mm, mm,
It took us 2 years to get a part of a church because I didn't want to be around or participate with the hypocrites that I knew. And I
yeah,
didn't understand how to enter into the church, particularly as a new dad in a new
mm,
city and all of these things. Navigating that was difficult. I ended up moving to South Jersey because I bought a chiropractic practice, and that's where we got plugged into a church. So
mm,
fast forward a number of years, loving being in the church, learning about Jesus. The community was really, really caring and helpful. But at the same time, about 8 years into this process, I realized that my wife and I were being shaped into people that didn't resemble who we thought we were. And
mm,
again, I don't think anyone was intentionally saying, you must become a Republican, you must homeschool your kids, your wife can no longer wear pants and only dresses, but all of these cultural things were the indicators that I was picking up on,
mm.
and we were struggling with, like, what does it mean for Jill to submit? We had this, and we'll never forget this conversation where yeah, yeah,
That's a
yeah.
conversation for the ages.
Yeah, and it was we were having this conversation about trying to make a decision. I mean, we have 4 kids, and I think we had at the time 2 or 3, and Jill was really I don't remember what the issue was, but we were having this conversation, and she looked like she was like not participating in the conversation to me. She looked like she was, I don't know, and I said, "What's going on here?" And she said, I'm just trying to listen, and I want to be submissive to what you decide." And I remember saying, like, it's probably not the way to handle this. I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't
Yeah,
like any of this. I don't want you to be this way. This isn't why we were
yeah.
together. And I don't know what's happening to us. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember, Gretchen and I had that conversation. We were dating or maybe right when we got engaged, and we
Yeah.
were, we were really young at the time, like 21, 22, and at Wheaton College. So we are living in all
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
And I remember her saying something about, like, me being the head of the household or submitting to that. And I looked at her and I'm like, "Are you crazy?" Like, and I think she was just saying what she thought she should say,
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
here's the script.
Yeah.
But at no but I very immediately I was like, "That is not how I think about anything, and that's not what we're doing here," you know?
Yes.
But it was
Yes.
like this moment of like,
Yeah.
how did this even become part of what we're, you know?
And for us, we didn't have anything to measure this against other than like our pre-Christian lives. So for us, we thought to be Christian is to do these things. It was a very limited sampling of what Christianity was. And again, I think everyone was sincere in what they were doing. But we came to this moment where I know for me, I was seeing many people every week in my chiropractic office, many of them who didn't know Jesus.
Mm,
And I had become very like moved on this track to becoming an elder, and I was thinking about going to seminary because I like to study, and I have some aptitude at that. And uh, and I was all being rewarded, but I was also like being taught to not really trust my neighbors because
mm,
they're lost, and it was my job to save them. And I never talked to the people in my practice as in the ways that I thought I was being formed to think
mm,
of people. And
mm,
I had this moment again where I really felt like I just want to be on the beach in California with my friends, but I want Jesus to be at the center of it. And that was my way of expressing I feel a lot of pressure to be someone who's not really who I am, but I'm doing it and I'm succeeding at it because I can
mm.
morph into it and I want to be liked and approved of. And I don't know how to be myself and follow Jesus. And that was kind of this crisis for me in some ways, which still doesn't get us to me being a pastor, right?
No, but I mean, I think this is really helpful because it's setting up the conversation that we sort of said we wanted to have today about evangelicalism and, as a culture
Yes.
and ideology and how it functions and what we're seeing now and like, what are the things we picked up on along the way
Yes.
that
Yes.
that the outcome of today might be surprising, but not really,
Yeah.
because you did this, like, so maybe you're sort of naming in my mind, like, canary in the coal mine moments of like,
Yes.
"Oh, there's something wrong here." This,
Yes.
eruption of the real, would Fitch would say, right? That of like,
Yes.
something's being exposed here that
Yes.
I don't know what to make sense of.
Yes.
And are any other moments that have been really significant for you on that journey that you can just go like, "This was a moment I've realized this is not does not equal what they say it equals."
Yeah, so exactly, like eruption of the real is kind of like how I have to learn everything, it seems like.
Mm.
So not wanting to offend and really sincerely thinking I need a different way, I came to the elders and started talking about I think I need to be involved in church planting and move to the city. And
Mm.
my wife and I, Jill and I, we prayed about that for a while because we love the city, we want to be in the city, but we thought like good white suburbanites, you don't move in the city with 3 or 4 kids and raise them there. You wait till they get onto the fine schools and good careers, and then you can move into the city
Yeah.
then. But part of my motivation was a love for the city for sure and the people there, but also like I need to be among people who can show me a way to be a Christian that actually loves people, not
Mm.
just judges and then talks about how we're going to go help them, but we don't do anything. And so we were sent to be a part of a church plant, and it was a church, part of the Acts 29 network. So now this doesn't age well. A lot of people that might mean nothing to you, but what it shows is that my desire to be in the city and our desire to like make disciples was the language, or the desire to love our neighbors was met with an unrealized understand. We didn't understand power dynamics within the church.
Mm.
So first our challenge was how the church relates to the cultures around it. And then it was, my goodness, I have no idea that there's all these hierarchies and power dynamics. And we started seeing God do amazing things within our home, but at the same time, we were being just totally abused by the other leaders and ended up being shunned. And it was terrible. And we left. And so that was another kind of like, oh my goodness. these
Mm,
intentions that I have, they need to be, here's a canary in the coal mine. Like, I need to understand
mhm,
how the dynamics of relationship and power, what does it mean to love and telling truth and being the fullness of grace like Jesus in a sense.
yeah,
And so that was another learning on the way. And I would say that when we went back to our home church, we knew we weren't going to stay there, but we knew that that was a good place for us to be. But we didn't feel like we had a place that we belonged. And we got recruited to consider planting a church, which seems really strange to me in retrospect, but it seems exactly right
mm,
because we had experienced these two ditches of like being
mhm,
isolated or being abused in the church, and realized we want to experience
mm,
a church that is really centered on Jesus. And I
mm,
find Jesus too compelling to not participate with people, even though there's lots of hardships and
yeah,
challenges. And
yeah.
we wanted to navigate that. And so that was another one of those big moments, and that kinda led us to about 10 years ago, starting the table.
I
Yeah.
I relate to so many different components of that, having lived through my versions of them.
Yes.
And I think part of it probably is the moments culturally in which we were exploring faith and ministry and this, like, and just how same things are in the water.
Yeah.
But for me, it was very much the every time I saw the exposure of what power and control were really doing
Mm.
and how they were bringing people completely into conflict with what they said their faith was or what they said Jesus was. And,
Yes.
for me, it started in college
Mm.
in a place like Wheaton where here's like the bastion of evangelicalism, but I'm being exposed to a much wider breadth of it than I had growing up and was beginning to already see how the power plays of people like James Dobson, who was
Mhm.
interfering with campus issues at
Mm.
Wheaton. No connection to Wheaton other than he was
Wow.
a power broker inside evangelicalism and
Yeah.
was strong arming the administration to like publish things in our school student run newspaper about Bible translations.
Wow. Wow.
And I remember at the time, and younger Greg was not patient or kind in his responses to such things.
Yeah. Yeah. Heard.
The immature prophet, right? But he wasn't wrong about the deception, the power, and the corruption that was happening.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
like 19-year-old Greg was right about a lot. He went
Yeah.
about everything the wrong way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but as I saw that played up, and then as I moved into ministry, and my first job was at a very large church that had all the trappings of like this is what we're going for, whatever. And I walked the halls as a janitor, and I was like, this is the most toxic place on earth.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
saw all of the way in which power was being used and utilized and all this. I'm not going, is any of this real? Like
Yeah.
whatever I do in ministry can't be this.
Yes.
I am going to go and explore what's the opposite of this. And I don't care if I'm even successful, but
Yeah.
I can't ever be responsible for putting this in the
Yeah. Yeah. That experience of the power imbalances and corruption in a small church plant here in Philly was instrumental in me like investigating these things, talking to people about it. And then I experienced like so many people have had this. And this is early 2000s, so people weren't necessarily talking about this in the same way, at least in the circles I was among, though I know everyone was experiencing it,
Yeah.
sadly.
Yeah.
But it also was instrumental in me, like, kinda tracking with Fitch at that point. He used to annoy me. I say this to him all the time. His Twitter presence I found annoying and just, like, always argumentative and disruptive, and I just didn't wanna deal with it, and then I kind of experienced the realities of the eruption of the real, like
Mm.
"Hey, who am I being shaped to be, and why? Why am I so quick to that? And why aren't we considering power?" And all of a sudden, I thought, "I think there's something here for me to learn."
Yeah. Well, great transition because you invoke the name of Fitch, who David Fitch, who runs a contextual theology program at Northern Seminary and has been a
Yes.
theological and academic mentor for both of us and friend
Yes.
along this journey. Fitch was the first one who gave me some framework to make sense of what I was experiencing and the why, which
Yeah.
is what eventually drove us into that. And I know you've been trying to help people encounter some of the ways in which Fitch is helpful in thinking about that, and especially about evangelicalism. On your Substack, you've been doing a great series through the book, The End of Evangelicalism.
Yeah. There it
Boom,
is.
right
Look, you
there.
got it. Alright.
And which is came out like 2011, 2010.
Yeah. 11. Yeah, 2011.
And so pre-MAGA, pre-rise of
Right.
Christian nationalism, you would have had a hard time back in 2011 convincing people Christian nationalism was a threat or a real thing.
Yes.
anywhere,
Yes.
right? But now is deeply prophetic
Yes.
in helping explain what we grew up with, what we encountered in ministry, all of the canary in coal mines now equal what we're seeing in absurdium, the absurd realities of some of those
Yeah.
pieces. So
Yes.
maybe we can explore that a little bit and some of the ways in which you're finding some of these ideas in the end of evangelicalism and other pieces, whatever, like that are helping you make sense of what people are seeing now.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can sort of choose your own adventure with where you
Sure.
want to go with that or how you want
Yeah.
to introduce it. But
Well, I think we've kind of gotten through some of my story, just my personal experiences, kind of why this might be important to me. But I think I was recognizing that the book came out in 2011, and this is the 15-year anniversary, which no one is celebrating except for Gino Curcarudo. He's definitely celebrating it because I think it's a really important book, and I know that a lot of times important books don't necessarily get the shine that they
yeah,
could, and not that I have a huge following, but I want to reintroduce the conversation. And Greg, you point out no one was talking about MAGA like they certainly like they are now, or even in 2016, in 2011. In fact, most of the things that I've read, even up to 2015, that talk about any kind of Christian nationalism and the Republican Democrat like polarity, they always seem to emphasize that that thing is just going to wipe away. In fact, I think Fitch mentioned something similar to that, and I take him to task a little bit on that. But
yeah.
hindsight being what it is,
Real
right?
wrong about the legitimacy and the appeal of this, right? Like,
Actually, absolutely. And
yeah,
what it was, yeah, the appeal is the right word there. And so I wanted to kind of highlight this and go through the book to think about what about this book is helpful not only then but now for these conversations. And it gets down to his interaction with Zizek and putting him into conversation with evangelicalism and evangelical theology, and putting like a spotlight on the idea of ideology, however we want to say it, and and how that's at work in our theology. And what that did for me the first time that I read this is I just went, "Oh my gosh. This is
yeah,
like telling my entire story with words that now I can understand it. I can have it. I feel like it's being like recapitulated. I don't, maybe re-narrated is a better way of saying it.
yeah.
Re-narrated where I don't have to have villains in my story. I can just
Mm,
see like we're products of our thinking and the form that we take, and we're missing out, everyone on whatever both sides of these antagonisms, and we can break this down more, are missing out on the
hmm.
fullness of Christ. And we're doing it because we're afraid. We're
Yeah.
afraid that we're going to be wrong or that we're going to be exposed. So it led to some compassion, which is a rare occurrence for
Mm,
me, unfortunately. And I think that's a really important thing that Jesus is working in my life. You talk about you as a young, angry prophet. I think doesn't matter how old I am, I tend to have a lot of anger that needs to get worked out in. And
yeah.
that's I don't say that without saying that that's an important issue, but I've definitely been humbled by my
Mm,
experiences, and then this gave me a framework to think through it. And I want more people to access it. And it's kind of complex. And when you throw around terms, ideology, master signifier, blah blah blah.
Well, and immediately, I mean, you mentioned Zizek, and it's first say, well, what's going to really help us understand the church is this Slovenian philosopher and cultural theorist named Slava
Yeah,
Zizek, and people
yeah,
go, I'm out
yeah,
right there, like
exactly.
up front, But if we can help translate why, just get
Yes,
into the like, here's what this actually tells us. You don't
yeah,
have to read it, you don't have to do the work,
yeah,
but here's some applications that will help us
yes,
get to it. So
yeah,
maybe let's get to some of those of the people can go and read it for themselves and jump on the Substack, or we can just give them this couple of things to look for that'll be
yeah,
really
yeah,
helpful in explaining. And I love that you rooted this in compassion because this is I similarly for me it is tools towards empathic intelligence is how I
yes.
describe it in my mind. That
Right,
by
well said.
understanding what is shaping people, it allows me to not treat them as the enemy, to not demonize them, to reestablish their humanity, and to think about how good news shows up for them.
Yes,
Because if we're being
yes,
influenced by these things that are moving us away from Christ, the good news is liberation.
yes,
right? Away from this.
Yes.
And this is the
Amen.
actual goal. It's not to tear down
Amen.
and participate in the enemy making machine. It's to go, no, there's deliverance here from these
Yes.
things that are maybe impacting the way we think about Christ. So
Yeah.
so let's get into a couple of those or
Sure.
tool that you think that might be helpful for
Yeah,
people.
I think the first thing for me that this reveals is that at the heart of most of our thinking is some form of ideology, something that we believe and hold up as if it's true and hold on to it and are shaped by this imaginary, this vision of this thing being true. But even more than that, it has to be true because our identity is kind of rooted in it. But the thing that Zizek kind of tells us is that all of these things are empty. They actually, at the core, there's nothing there. And what we end up doing is creating antagonisms. We start talking about those people who aren't like us, or
Mhm.
look at, and so we build up, in a sense. This is a very oversimplified, I'm sure Fitch, if he heard this, would just be like, what are you guys doing, right?
It's fine.
But I think it's helpful. This is kind of how I describe it for people who want to talk about it with me, is that it's helpful to think of this as an emptiness at the core that we protect and try to validate ourselves
Mhm.
rather than saying we are empty and we're not telling the truth. We
Yeah.
hold on to the opposite of empty, which is like this antagonism. So we
So
could break that down more, but yeah.
yeah, no. So here's the working out of this to just make
Yeah.
this really real. So I was engaged. I don't engage in a lot of social media conversations. I mainly just comment on and read stuff that I think is good for me and I like people I like, right? But there is a public ministry aspect of it. Especially Facebook seems to be the one place of public ministry that people
Yeah.
engage with in doing that. And I have a lot of friends there. And was engaged with a conversation with a pastor, somebody who I used to work with and mentor for a while. And they put out this statement of like, I'm sorry, I'm going to get canceled, but truth is truth. And then
Right.
proceeded to like list out like the playbook of antagonisms of truth from a conservative white evangelical American perspective. And
Yes.
all of those truths were contextually true if this is the world you live in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and was very much setting up, the opposition against progressivism. And I kept just pointing out that the world that shaped his worldview is the same world he's speaking against. That like
Yeah.
that like
Yes.
it's all progressive humanism. Like everything in our political system,
Mm.
everything is actually rooted in neoliberal capitalism. Like you're
Mhm.
not saying these people aren't any different than you. They just
Yes.
view the way of living in this system the same. So you're arguing within,
Yeah.
the closed box, right? And I kept just
Yeah.
gently loving, like, I believe in you. I'm not canceling you. I'm not even challenging you. I'm just saying both of these things are the same. They're not
Yes.
different.
Yes.
And this is what you're pointing to. Like it's the same. It's all operating the exact same thing.
Yeah, and when and I have lots of thoughts about how we could talk about ideology and empty signifiers outside the church. Or I mean, I don't know that there is like an outside the church. I was thinking about how people view my city that
Mm.
live outside of my city. This is like I shouldn't say this about everyone, but they basically are saying racist stuff without even meaning that,
Oh yeah.
thinking that they're being racist, because
Oh
they
yeah.
talk about everything except for their prejudice. They make it about crime or poverty or their own lack of safety and the dirtiness of the city.
Hmm.
And they but ultimately it's an empty thing because
Hmm.
they don't know what they're talking about. And
Yeah.
if they come in here, you could talk to one of my kids who's grown up and sees the same crime, dirt, poverty, and
Hmm.
says, this is my place, it's
Yeah.
beautiful and broken. And so if my kids were to respond with the same kind of vitriol, they
Mm.
would be, like you said, it's the same thing, we're doing the exact same thing, working from an emptiness. But what they do is they talk about the fullness.
Mm.
My kids will describe how these beautiful opportunities for connect and how these are opportunities for humanity to serve, like to serve other people in the brokenness. And so we don't just break it down as negative and walk away, but we say, no, this is our place. We're rooted here and we want to build it up.
But this is okay. So this is perfect. So the what some of these tools help us identify is the emptiness, but
Yeah,
they can be used to point towards a fullness. That's a perfect
absolutely.
sort of switch within that. There's a quote from the book that struck me thinking about talking about the things that signal the emptiness, the master
Yeah.
signifiers, right?
Yeah.
Here are the symbols, right?
Yeah.
So by isolating the symbols of evangelicalism, by showing the way that they work, we can reveal the ways evangelicals are passivized and become complicit in systems with which we normally would have nothing to do.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the hopefulness to me of,
Yes.
if we can recognize that when we use the term biblical, it means nothing for most people.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
empty. It's a label, but we can say, "Oh, you're," if we can actually live into the fullness of that, of,
Yeah.
well, let's examine scripture. Let's
Mhm.
listen to the myriad diverse voices within scripture. Let's listen to
Yeah.
the global church and how we read scripture.
Yes.
If you want to commit to that, I'm full in seeking Christ with you. Let's
Right.
turn towards the fullness. Let's absolutely. I want to be biblical. Let's chase it together. Do you want to
Right.
do that work? You know?
Right. Right. And I think when you're getting at with that word, so Fitch works through in his book, for those who haven't read it, he works through three what we'll call empty signifiers of evangelicalism, and these are going to be hot button issues. In 2011, not as much maybe, but I guess they
Yeah.
were, of the inerrant Bible, the decision for Christ, and
Mhm.
the Christian nation, and we can talk about those. But I love the idea of biblical, because to
Mhm.
experience the fullness of biblical, you mentioned it, like, what do you mean by biblical? Well, what I think when people use that term, they often are trying to indicate that it aligns with what the Bible says is true. And then how it's used is often to say that someone is not aligning with what they believe the Bible to be true.
Right.
However, they have not considered the contextual nature of their use of the term biblical. And
Mhm.
you mentioned it, Greg, and I don't want to just move past it. What
Run.
about the global majority interpretation of the Bible? Like,
Right.
are you accounting for it? And so the reveal that can happen of the emptiness of using the biblical is when you say, like, have you considered other interpretations? Have you considered, or actually your interpretation is very much your contextual understanding. And oftentimes it's, a white majority culture interpretation that
Yeah.
does not consider power, does not consider other voices. And then rather than saying these are different contextual understandings from our perspective and lens, we say
Mhm.
they're wrong, I'm right. And now we have an antagonism.
Right. Right. And so the contrast to that would be, if you identify that that's how it's working, is just the permission to not operate inside of it.
Yes.
You can
Yes.
just opt out of the assumption you are right and they are
Yes.
wrong and therefore they are your enemy, and you can assume the posture, which I would say is a cruciform posture, thus everything
Yes.
I talk about, of
Yes.
Christ,
Amen.
of humility,
Hmm.
of coming to serve, so that I can understand, why do you read scripture this way?
Yeah.
Why? Who has taught you to read scripture this way? What motivated them? Have you encountered any other voices? Have you had moments where, if you're honest with yourself, you've experienced the eruption of the real, where
Yes.
as you've tried to, like, live into what you've been taught, you've gone, this doesn't actually work that well,
Right. Right. And
right?
what Fitch does, and I want to highlight, is that the way we can see if we're caught up in these antagonisms, basing our theology in actual ideological frames, is how we actually come together, how we embody this. What does it
Hmm.
look like for the church's actual practices? Do we have enemies? Are we making enemies of people that actually are our neighbors? Are we calling them
Yeah,
enemies? Are
yeah,
we basing things in antagonism? So that, and the thing that's related to that, and this is kind of what I hope we can talk about a little bit, is the fullness of the church is the fullness of Christ, who is all
mm,
in all, and forming us together. And Jesus, who says, as I have loved you, so you love one another, that people
mm,
would know that you're my disciples. And there's this social witness, is how I like to talk about it. The church is a
hmm,
social witness. Whether it's a positive social witness of love, empathy, and welcome, or if it's a social witness of antagonism, othering, and violence, those are extreme. I made a very extreme,
yeah,
hyperbolic argument there, but you can see the space we're working in. And so if the result of our theology is us being separate from people, then I think we might want, and also having antagonisms within our churches, that
yeah,
is our witness. Like, what are
yeah,
we telling the world? Hey, I don't think that's an upgrade for your life if you come be a part of the church. You can have antagonisms and separation and othering without the idea of Jesus in scare quotes.
Yeah, and it's working this out on a practical level is really hard. I mean,
Mhm.
it's difficult. I'll name that I think I have gotten better at it in the last decade by being forced to,
Yeah.
but also just the acknowledgement of how hard it is to do that has opened up space for my own sanctification for God, for
Yes.
to become more like Christ,
Abs
to practice
absolutely.
humility, to confess, to recognize in ways in which I thought I was trying to help people who I saw trapped. I was trying to proclaim liberation to them, but
Yeah.
it just felt like enemy making to them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And I'm not, and like, there's elements of that where some that may have happened regardless, but I was like, oh, I was in some ways wielding my authority as a teacher,
Yeah.
wielding my position as their pastor, and I was doing it in love and all this, but it didn't work, and it
Yeah.
immediately shut them down and made them communicate to them. If the pastor sees me as like this, then the community sees me like this, and I need to find a place where people see me as I belong, not I'm an outsider,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
that's really
Yes.
difficult work.
It really is. The other things that are working against this work, it's our own formation within the church that says like we've got to be truth tellers, but the truth is just separated from actually what truth looks like. Truth
Mm,
apart from like presence, grace, God gives God's self to people
yeah.
in presence. That's the whole throughout the whole narrative of scripture, and that is an expression of grace. That is, I'm
Mm,
with you, you're mine, and that makes a different kind of relational, secure attachment, if you will,
yeah.
for truth telling. But also, what for as humans, I think, and you probably know this better than me, is like there might be like this relational connection, but that doesn't mean that truth can violate that all the time.
Mhm,
Like
mm,
the truth has to be for the good of others, and we're formed as I think in so much of this, the kind of Western intellectual, individualistic, like this is the truth and you need to get on board with it, that we don't take into account how the truth is experienced in our
mhm,
bodies or among people. And we don't even, I mean, it's not sufficient for me to sit here and say, we have a relational problem, though that is true.
mhm,
We don't know how to relate to God and to others within the church,
mm.
and we're not being formed into this. And then we don't want to go to the other extreme where it's just like, hey, everything is okay. Everything's fine. We'll stop talking
It'll be
about
fine.
controversial things,
Right, 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 right.
and so the other factor is the cultural, what Hartmut Rosa, a sociologist and philosopher, talks about as the cultural acceleration, the speed at which things move. And within the church, we adopted that, especially in the West, like the idea that our churches should be going up and to the right on the growth chart in every
Right,
metric all
right.
the time. It's just not actually humane. And so my one of my things that I try to emphasize, and I need to be reminded of, is like the church needs to work in a different time and space that doesn't get caught up in the idea that we always must be growing and we always must be truthing and like harming people with that truth, that we have to actually have pockets of relational time and space with each other and with our neighbors where we can move at a humane pace for relationship. And I'm
Yeah,
on the remedial program, so it's gonna
yeah,
take me a lot of time, and I need a big spacious community.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you're referencing some of Andrew Root's work in that way, but Andrew Root specifically writes around some of
Yes.
those exact ideas
Yeah.
in really helpful ways, and thinking about our experience of time sickness,
Mm.
right? That
Mm.
because of the acceleration, like we're living in time sickness. Like it's essentially we're in jet lag at all times because of the
Yeah.
acceleration of the world and the life, and the deceleration of
Yes.
shared life,
Yeah.
of how to be present to each other, how to listen, how to slow down, how to
Mhm.
only be in one place at a time. Like
Yeah.
these are things that help us identify what's happening to us,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like it's the
Yes.
joy of like I have a friend who's a philosophy professor, and he teaches this class about The Great Life, and it
Mm,
introduces all of these ideas of like, what does sort of philosophy say is like the great life, right? And he does this from a
yeah.
Christian perspective, but it's always interesting because he makes his students do these experiments and they choose them, but he has different experiments, and one of them is like, I forget, it's a day or 2 days or a week without their phone. We're like
Wow.
shutting it down for a certain period of time, and then to reflect on it, to write about it over and over again. They discover what it is to be human.
Yes.
I was less anxious. I noticed I've been walking past these trees every day on campus. They're beautiful.
Yes.
I'd never seen them before, but it's like this is the
Yes.
opportunity. What's your name, right? We can create a space to slow and be human and understand ourselves and our neighbor and what's going on in such a different way.
One of the gifts that we might have in our age group, Greg, is that we can remember what it was like before the phones were ubiquitous. And at the same time, we're not totally removed from the technology. I mean, it's in us. The digital is out there and it's in
Right.
us in some way. And so we still struggle, and it makes us kind of like bridge people between
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
generations, so to speak, or other life experiences, I'd like to say more. I think that's a really important component, but I think we need to have spaces to learn this, and I think part of my my other experiences and are show that the church does not function with awareness of our ideology.
Mm.
We just kind of consume it and put it out there, and that's not to say that I don't have some. I also had a crisis of thinking, I where I disagree with Zizek, if this isn't controversial, is that I don't think that everything is empty. I
Yeah.
do think that at the center and core of Christianity is the fullness of Christ. Like I
Hmm.
said, I mean, it is Jesus. Zizek would disagree. I think that's why he can call himself like a Christian atheist, is the way that he talks about,
Yeah.
of all the ideologies, this is the one that kind of fits my ideas. But I think that's an interesting component, and we don't
Mm.
need to be afraid of
Mm.
exposing these things or talking about them.
Yeah.
So the closer we get to talking about reality, the closer we move to Christ and one another.
That is a great simple articulation of why the pursuit of what's real matters.
Yeah. Mm.
When I first stepped foot on Wheaton College's campus and was experiencing the different things that we did there, there was the renowned philosopher and his there, whose name's escaping right now, John. Anyways, but his thing was like all truth is God's truth was the thing that like
Yeah.
drove the pursuit
Right.
of academics on campus. Right? Why does
Yes.
this matter? All truth is God's truth, but all reality is God's reality.
Absolutely.
So if we're getting closer to what's real, then yeah, we're drawing closer to Christ.
Yeah.
Great, let's do that.
Yes. Yeah, we live among cultures though, and this is in the church too, where we say my truth, my reality is my reality, your reality is different. And that's not what I don't think that's what we're talking about. I understand that linguistic move, but I think the realist thing is God giving God's self as in presence. And so why don't we want to meet God in that reality? And I think that's what we're striving for. We put up barriers with our thinking, our fears,
Mm,
our moving away from, or our kind of desires to control,
mhm,
and say like, I'm going to name this as reality. And while that might be in the moment less painful than facing the holy loving God
yeah,
in God's reality, it's never good. It's
mm,
never good long term. And this isn't a like, hey, remove the Band-Aid and suck it up kind of. I'm not trying to make that statement. I'm saying actually in a broken, even fragmented world, God's reality is painful and beautiful at the same
mhm,
time, but the story isn't finished. We're moving through Christ
mm,
into the fullness of Christ, where there
yeah.
is nothing but Christ and the reality in its fullness. I want to be a part of that more and more each day.
Yeah. And what I hear some of you articulating is this the hopefulness of creating communities where that's what we're trying to do. And we recognize that
Absolutely.
that is what's going to change us. And that's going to be our posture towards the world. And that positions us as servants and friends. And but I keep coming back to this great German theologian slash chaplain, whatever, named Frank Vogon, who wrote this book called The Empathic God. And
Mm,
it's the best contextual theology book I've read in a long time. Like it's incredible. It
wow.
just came out a couple years ago. But what because of his work with in the incredible trauma and ERs and just all of these things, he was for him it was like making more better sense of atonement theology. from
Mm,
his background, like German
mhm.
Reformed, and
Yeah.
and actually recognizing how the cross is this revelation of the empathic nature of God, right? And that our traumas, our sufferings, our pains, the struggles of humanity, they need the empathic witness that validates them, that makes them real, and then allows healing to take place. And
Yeah.
so as you're articulating that, I'm like thinking like, yeah, the communities of empathic witness, like this is real. What we're
Yes.
experiencing is real and it matters, and by witnessing it to each other, man, Christ can break through.
Absolutely. Stanley Hauerwas, huge influence on both of us. I know you're wearing the shirt
I'm
today.
wearing my Stanley Hauerwas t-shirt today.
That's great. Shout out to Stan. He says famously and really succinctly, the first task of the church is to be the church so that the world sees itself as the world. And that's not an
Mm,
antagonism, that's an empathic witness. And I think that we're so caught up in antagonisms inside the church, and if you can say outside the church, just the cultures of all of us, that we want this church world separation and
mm,
we don't know how to do it.
yeah,
I mean, I think I'm speaking with way more authority than I ought to on these things. I think many people are working this out in
yeah,
beautiful ways,
yeah,
so I don't mean to say that, but I don't want to just be antagonistic against the church. That would be kind of ironic at best and
yeah,
hypocritical at worst. But I
sure.
think that it's a challenge because people will say to Stanley, and they've said it to Fitch. We've heard him say, and they probably say it to you, Greg, and they say it to me, "Where is this church?" And I would say, well, it's right here. This is what Stanley says too. It's like you are the church. And so
Mhm,
are you moving toward the real and an
mm,
empathic embrace of the real in a community where you work out your stuff because
yeah,
that's actually the work of the church. You
mhm,
have arguments and you reconcile, and that might be the best witness more than any gospel track or sermon series or anything, is just a community that actually is reconciled in some way in
yeah,
a world where that just doesn't happen.
mhm,
That's the witness, that's the demonstration that, oh, there's another way possible. And I think that's what we can lovingly be, that
mm,
and engage the world with that love rather than an antagonism. It's a
mm,
welcome.
mm. Well, I think you just wrapped it up beautifully there. I mean, that's the vision and the hope. There is no
Mm,
idealized church. There's no perfection in this. There's nobody who can say my hands are clean, right?
yeah,
Our hands are all dirty because we have to do this work.
yeah,
But by committing to the work, that's the church.
yeah,
Like, because
absolutely.
God compassionately meets us in that work.
Yeah, it moves me quite a bit because, I'm in my 50s and I see that I probably don't have startups left in me,
Mm, yeah. Yeah,
or at
yeah,
least not as
yes,
many as I
I
did.
do know.
I don't mean that as a prophetic word for anyone. I just mean that as a personal intuition.
Yeah.
And there's this idealistic version of me that keeps saying it's gonna get better, whatever that means. Whatever the thing is that's annoying me today is
Mhm,
gonna get fixed. And the word of the Spirit to me constantly is, this is it. And that's
mhm.
not, and I don't receive that as a like, you messed up, you done gone and
That's all
chose
you
the
got, that's all
wrong
you got.
thing,
Right,
or you're
right.
not getting it. It's the goodness is now. And
Yeah.
it's in exactly what you just said. Like, this is the work of the church.
Mhm.
Stop pastoring the church of your ideology. Stop,
Yeah.
stop practicing, trying to be the person that doesn't exist. Like,
Mhm.
work out on the ground with the people around you. Bonhoeffer says that our idea of community often gets in the way of us experiencing
Fancy
community
community.
because we
Yeah.
don't meet with the people that are around us. And I think that's right. I mean, all this stuff kind of coalesce for me into this like, slow down, be present, love deeply, meaning do the hard work
Yeah.
required to uphold the love of Christ in the world.
Yeah. And I think that's probably what I immediately related to in your story and what you're doing, is because for you that's been rooted in, here's a place and a
Hmm.
people that I'm going to work this out with, and that commitment, like that's just what you're doing.
Yep.
And 18 years of pastoring here in Chesterton, Indiana has been the same. This is the
Absolutely.
people I had to choose. God called me and said, make them your people. And I said, are
Hmm.
you sure? God's like, yeah. And then I arrived and they're like, yay. And then they were like, are we sure? But it's been 18 years of working that out and staying committed to that. And the people who have committed to that journey, who were still working that out together, like it's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my life because of what you're naming. Like it's Christ has continually shown up to change us. We're different people, and I think more Christ-like people in our best moments. So thanks be to God.
Amen. Amen.
That's awesome. Do you know what, if people want to connect with you and get nerd out on some of this or just find out what you're doing, where do they find you?
I'd love for them to find me on Substack. I'm trying to write out these ideas. I'm also on Facebook, like all middle-aged white guys. That's where we do our most creative work,
we did.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah. And of course, we can include my email in the show notes or whatever like that.
I'll put some links to your stuff in there. That's great.
Yeah.
And if people are in Philadelphia, they could come and
let's grab coffee. Please come visit. Or we're welcome to check out the table as well. We're trying to figure this out on the ground.
There you go. That's awesome. All right. Well, thanks, and look forward to the next conversation where we work out all of the other things and solve the world's problems. So
yeah, part 2 will solve everything. Thanks, Greg.
Stay tuned. Thanks for listening to Cruciform Conversations. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube, and to visit the Cruciform Reflection Substack at drgregarthur.substack.com.